Welcome everyone to the November 14th meeting of the North Kingstown School Department Building Subcommittee. I just want to remind everyone we're sending out an attendance sheet. If you could sign that, swing that all the way around so that it will finish with me, and then we have this, but we have a quorum, which is always great news. We will start with our first item, which is public comment. We have 2 people signed up. Howard Quinn.
Good evening. Howard Quinn, 109 Clearview Drive. According to the agreement with Perkins Eastman dated August 30th, 2023, signed by Dr. Dube on September 12th, Perkins Eastman is to be paid $850,000 for work up until the bond referendum on November 7th. Any work performed after that date to support a Phase 2 submission to RIDE would cost the town of NK an additional money, $868,000 more. According to the agreement with Jacobs dated August 21st, 2023, signed by Dr. Dube on September 12th, Jacobs is to be paid $54,000, initial $29,000 plus an additional $25K from September through November for work up until the bond referendum on November 7th. Any work performed after that date to support a Phase 2 submission to RIDE would cost the town of NK additional money, $45,000 more. Question. Are Perkins Eastman and Jacobs moving forward, continuing work towards a Stage 2 submission and incurring additional costs to the town, or have they been told to cease since the bond was rejected?
I will just say they're not here tonight.
I noticed that.
So they're not here tonight. You mentioned about the contract and the fees, and until we can identify the funds, they are not attending.
Okay, I just want it on the record. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next speaker is Frank Slade.
Well, seeing no one is here tonight, I've had questions for PA engineering that I would have liked answered regarding Stage 2 in the analytical results of soil samples of Davisville Elementary. We have heard nothing as to any contamination at that site, and it has been previously. There has been farming on that site, and we need to know before we go further, any further, what the analytical results were of those testings. That's my question for tonight.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't need to ignore, so that's, there's no for an answer. That was, you just explaining to us. I didn't want to not answer your question, so we're really loud and clear, and then we'll look into that.
It is something definitely that needs to be looked at now before anything goes further than
Fair enough.
the next step.
And I wrote that question down.
Is there any other public comment? Any other public comment? I'm asking that only because, and I've spoken to the committee, I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone on this, but if you feel differently, this is your committee, so I'll defer to the co-chair and any other member. At the last meeting, I found it kind of counterproductive to allow having residents question during the dialogue. We have so much work to do that if we were at a crowd of 20 and we actually had that, I think we'd really be in trouble. But if the committee, so I just want to say, any other public comment, we're here for you. But for us to do what we did last month, I think would be a mistake. But if the committee disagrees at any time, either now or during the meeting, or if the co-chair disagrees, by all means, I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about that. But I found it kind of counterproductive last meeting where a resident who had well intentions, as we were having different items, they would jump up and have questions, and really that should be strictly for the committee. But
I'll just add, there are only a few members here tonight in the audience. I think if there were many members, that would be difficult for us to answer everyone's questions. But there are just a few. I think if we keep it organized, and if there's many more questions, we can. But if it gets when there's a lot of questions back and forth, I think we should take note of the questions, and maybe we can do the work. But if there are a few, I would be okay with
sounds good.
answering.
I'll defer to the committee then. No problem. I don't know if anybody else felt that way, and I felt as co-chair, I wasn't doing a good job by just allowing us to do our work. So if the co-chair feels differently and we'll defer to the committee, that sounds great. Thank you. Next item is the approval of the minutes of the November 1st meeting. Unless there's any questions or suggested revisions, there's a motion in order to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. The next, we have just a couple of items, but they could, I'm sure there will be some discussion. So the next one is the next steps for school facilities. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent to lead this discussion. Before I do, I just want to mention that I had the opportunity to, as a result of a couple of discussions I had with the superintendent, I took it upon myself to do some research as to the election calendar. Should the council and school committee, with our guidance, recommendation, or no opinion whatsoever, decide to attempt to move forward with a special election, which I know that is definitely an option in order to take advantage of the incentives, I wanted to take a look at the election calendar. And to have a special election, assuming that we wouldn't have the same exact question, we would need General Assembly enabling legislation. That enabling legislation would have to be introduced via a council resolution. I would think that is probably a difficult time for the council to have adequate information to pass a resolution anytime before the January 8th meeting, realizing that we only have a meeting on November 20th and December 11th. So if my assumptions are correct, and even January 8th I think is kind of ambitious, the General Assembly would have to pass a resolution, and from there, pass the new legislation, and from there, the soonest you can have a special election is 50 days later.
That's 50 days after the General Assembly approves.
Approves the question, and we get it to the Board of Elections, then the 50-day clock starts. Based on that calendar, and realizing that we cannot have a special election during the presidential primary, and realize that a special election has to be on the first Tuesday following the first Monday. I forget how it goes, but I did the dates. And so that would mean that March would be out of the question, because I don't think you can get enabling legislation within 50 days of the first Tuesday in March. April is out of the question because it's already booked with the presidential primary. May is regretfully out of the question because of staffing issues in the town clerk's office. And so the earliest we could have a special election would be in June. I just want the committee to know this. I'll be passing this on to the town council most likely Monday night. But again, I repeat myself, unless we were able to get the General Assembly to pass enabling legislation the first day in session, and then get the Board of Elections to certify it, which would allow a special election in March. And that's going to be real tight, the first 2 days. I don't know how you do that, to be honest with you. I think Jeanette and I, the town clerk, did our math today, and the enabling legislation would have to be approved into the Board of Elections by January 12th. And that would be virtually impossible. I don't even know if you get the General Assembly to do that. So based on that calendar, again, that means April would be the next month, and you can't have an election in the presidential primary. May, we have a staffing issue in the town clerk's office, and they run the special election. So June, I think it was the 8th, but I don't know, would be the earliest we can have a special election. I thought this was important information to have for us to move on to our next
What's
steps.
the staffing situation in May?
There are two, of course, there are 2 individuals who already have out of the country vacations scheduled, and we could not run an election without them. So again, if May makes a big difference versus June, we would make something happen. But hopefully it's not a big difference between May and June. But if we felt that May was critical and June was out of the question, then we would figure something out. But it really, after meeting with my town clerk today, I can assure you it would be a very heavy lift. I don't know how we pull it off, but if we needed to, simple as that.
Just leaves us a couple of weeks to hire. And see that risk.
So again, I'm going to turn this item over to the superintendent. I know it'll be a robust discussion, but the next item is next steps for school facilities.
So just a few questions on what we brought up. So as far as bringing something to for school committee or school committee Thursday night, and we would get a decision from school committee, decision from town council as far as we're moving forward, what we would have to have a decision made by town council by what date?
If you wanted to do what?
Well, to be able to get something to the General Assembly by January, to be able to put this back out there.
I would say that January 8th is their first meeting. And if we're looking at May or June, and I'm really pushing June, if we're looking at May or June, then you probably have their second meeting as well. So that would probably be the 22nd. I'd have to look at the calendar. But if you want the council to act on January 8th or 22nd, I'm just talking from experience, but I want to defer to the council. This is their responsibility. I would lean as close to January 8th as we could. I'd love to get us into the General Assembly before things start heating up over there. And when January 22nd hits, I'm just worried that they're going to have a lot on their plate. I'd love to catch them early. It's pretty quiet up there. Let them pass any legislation and move forward. I don't think January 22nd is out of the question. Once you get past that, you're looking at February. So I guess February is not out of the question because you have 50 days later. So if they passed it in February, you have 50 days of March and April. So I guess you could do February, but with General Assembly vacation, during February vacation week, they're going to start talking budget, the governor's state of the state. Again, I just, based on experience, I would either do in January or in May.
So we know with the dates for RIDE, the stage 2 is due February 15th. In May, that's when the elementary and secondary board would meet for approval of a project. We would get approval right away in May, because they usually do a quick turnaround. And by, it's June, I'm trying to exact date, we have to have a contractor.
June 30th.
June 30th, we have to have a contractor hired. So we would have to be doing that process at the same time that a vote is going out.
Good point.
Hiring someone based on the approval of a bond.
So what I can do, that's a very good point, what I can do from here is, because this all happened very late this afternoon, I can reach out to the Secretary of State of Board of Elections to see if there's any leeway, although I do believe for some reason the General Assembly passed legislation that actually requires cities and towns to have a special election. Again, I think it's either the first or the second Tuesday. I don't know why they did that, so you only have 1 day a month to have a special election. So based on that, I know, it sounds like you're saying, May makes a lot more sense than June.
Right, and in May we do that all the time, and that's what we had talked about earlier, that if we were to go back out for a vote, May would be the latest, because of the timelines that we have to have in place.
Right.
With RIDE.
So I can follow up on that and report back to the committee sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours. But again, I do know that April really is out of the question. You cannot have, because the president's primary isn't really an election. It's the parties utilizing our equipment to run their own elections. And so you can't have an election that day because it's really a party convention that you're using machines for, believe it or not. So that's my understanding, having spent 8 years in the job, that I know you can't have another question other than the party politics. So, and if you did, that would be very confusing, because when you go to the ballot box, you either vote in Democratic primary, Republican primary, and so.
Right, and we know April, which is based on the primary.
Exactly, that kind of throws it up there.
All right, so as far as, discussing this agenda item of next steps for our school facilities, there's a few things that we need to talk about. So one is decision from the school committee and town council regarding moving forward to having another vote out there in the spring and what that question would be. I know we've had conversations about separating the questions, so that way it's just a question regarding the schools.
Yes.
Versus a question with the schools and the safety complex together.
Yes.
And we also need to discuss what that question will be. What is it that we would be putting back out to our community in support of improving our school facilities? And we know that the stage 2 application to RIDE is due by February 15th, 2024, and that's to complete the stage 2 application, which we've started some of that work. But the additional work that would need to be completed from now until then are the schematic designs. And we know we would need to have that contract with an architecture for those AV services, as well as the funding to pay for it. And so that's, it's another, decision that needs to be made is where those funds come from. So in order to move forward, we need the funding to complete that stage 2 application. And what is it that, we're going to bring forward to the community as far as the plan that we are going to address for the schools. We've been very vocal about the need for a new middle school based on the conditions of Davisville Middle School and Whitford Middle School and the assessment reports that we have. We've also been very vocal about the needed renovations across the district with all the other schools. And when there's no funds to do any of those renovations, we're just creating more challenges and more problems for this town because the schools are not going, their facilities are not going to improve unless we're able to make those renovations. And band-aiding is not an answer because the more we band-aid any of the issues we have, and we've laid out that every elementary school needs a new roof, and there's roofs that are leaking, and every time we put another few $100,000 or whatever it may be, all we're doing is band-aiding that and spending more taxpayers' money just to fix something, not replace. So that's a concern, and we need to be able to identify how we can get this work done. And in order to move forward, we need to have a plan, and I would say, commitment from school and town of how do we fund this project to be able to complete a stage 2 with the work that needs to be done, so that way we can go back out to the community, right, to try to get support for a bond to do the work on the schools. There's no way this work's going to get done without a bond. I would hope that people understand that. Because you're not just going to come up with the millions of dollars that we need to improve these schools. And we need to maintain the schools. We can't keep going the direction we're going in because it's just going to be worse. And in the end, it's the students, it's the children that are going to be impacted by this. So I know this committee isn't here to make a decision on funding, but that is a conversation that we need to be having between school committee and town council in the upcoming meetings. I think from here, we can talk about the plans. And I can bring forward any type of recommendations to the school committee as far as moving forward, and do we continue on on the track that we're going with the plan that we have, or do we think that it should be a different plan that we put out there to the community with all the known needs that we have in this district?
And I think it's important to point out that when we do a stage 2 submission, we can't just submit the items we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. Because part of the stage 2 submission process is how are you going to fund those improvements? So had the bond passed, our funding source would have been the bond. Now that we don't have the funding source, we've got to figure out what projects we're prioritizing and then how they're being paid for.
So question, stage 2 is a 5-year plan.
Correct.
So why couldn't you use bonding as a possible funding source? Because we don't know if there'll be a bond in the next 5 years.
Correct. You could use future years bonds.
Okay,
Yes.
good, all right. Because if not, then it would be very small.
It would be very small. Correct.
But we need to identify the funds in order to complete the work for the stage 2.
Right. So, yeah, just to clarify my understanding of what you just said, we have 2 separate issues. One is funding of the actual stage 2, of which I know what you're saying, but we almost have to put bond as a possible funding source, or else we couldn't do anything. Your question is, but we need someone to do the stage 2. We need to pay someone. Where does that
We
come
need to
from?
pay someone to do the stage 2, so we actually can submit something.
Yes. And do we have any idea? Everybody's stage 2 is due in February, right?
So not everybody goes in the same cycle. So you can submit stage 1 and stage 2 on February 15th and September 15th. So if somebody just submitted a stage 1 or stage 2 on February 15th, they wouldn't necessarily have anything to do. So not every community is targeting, this February 15th. Some of them could have done them a year ago or 2 years ago and be in their
And
project.
I bring it up because a couple of questions that were asked of me and I don't have the answers, and maybe we can get them at some point, is, and I thought Perkins Eastman were wonderful to work with, as was Jacobs, I want to make that clear, is what were other communities spending for their stage two? That this 850 to 1.7 numbers seemed expensive, and I don't know the answer to that.
And there were some communities who had bonds passed who hadn't even gotten to that point yet.
They have to get it by September.
But now they have to get it, but their bond was approved, so now they have the funding to do that. I don't know what their costs were, but there were communities who said, we're gonna make these improvements, pending bond money. So what we did is we spent money up front, where some other communities are doing it the other way around.
So what you're saying is that a lot of communities, or some communities, went forward with the bond without spending the 850,
Correct.
and you felt that we couldn't do that. And we felt that we couldn't do that.
Correct. Just based off of the questions that we've heard, right? And there's a lot of information.
Well, we were doing the work, so we had a plan, so we had something to share. The communities did.
And we were being, there was criticism that we didn't have enough plans, which I would disagree with. So imagine if we didn't spend money.
Correct.
Any comments from the community?
I just think that there was no other location besides Davisville, that we've gone to all different locations. So basically, I thought as a group here, we have to let everybody know that Davisville is the place, and that's how we're gonna go more or less, and make that look as beautiful as possible, and having everything. Because I know people, that was one of the concerns from a lot of people, being up to nothing, not being in the middle, and I know there's no place, no other place around. So that's the problem.
Looking at the available lands that we have to use, and with the plan that we have, Davisville, that site has the most land. We did look at the current Woodford Middle School. That land over there, the architects drew a design for us, and we know there isn't enough space there to do a plan of one consolidated middle school with the amenities to go along with it.
I just want to elaborate on your question and the superintendent's answer, because one thing that we're not saying is that, and I know a lot of us know this, that the superintendent has put together, or is putting together, I believe, and I don't need to speak for him, a very aggressive outreach program to hear from the people of the town as to, some idea that they had, but what was it that, in my eyes, what was it that made them vote no? And so I would have to, before receiving that information, which I give the superintendent a ton of credit for trying to get that information, that's not gonna be easy. I don't know if I would make the statement that you have just made. I'm not sure I don't think anything's off the table. I think for us to just, as a co-chair of the building committee and as town meeting, for me to just say, the only thing we can do is put the same question on the ballot, I think that would be short-sighted and a mistake. I'm not saying the same question shouldn't be, but we gotta think about the things.
We're working on a survey to send a survey out. I thought, plan was to get out last week, and we're still working on that survey. This way we can get some information from the town, and I believe it's best to get feedback from our community as to why the support wasn't there for the plan and the bond that was put out. And I think it's important that we try to gather that information so that it could be useful for us in moving forward. And that's me speaking as the superintendent.
That's what I felt, because I think that a lot of people, when you're looking at carrying around, it's too far to travel. Travel becomes a big situation. So we don't know, we've been looking for a land, there's really no way. I know we were lucky in high school that we had 40 acres of land to be able to build, knock down, and continue. We don't have that kind of land, that's the problem.
And to your point, we did look at an assessment. There were a couple, I want to say 2015, 2018, that right around the solar farm areas. So we did look at those reports, and any of the parcels that were large enough either had, I think one of them has a national grid around energy easement, like right down the middle. There were wetlands issues. So we did look at, many, even not just school department, but we looked at town-owned assets, and there just wasn't.
So what's your plan for the survey of getting to people like me who has no kids in the school, and that sort of thing?
So my secretary reached out to the Independent and Standard so that we could put something out in the paper with a link to it. It would also be on our website and we put it out on social media. But not everyone goes on social media, so it will be in the paper as well.
No, I'm just thinking, so the paper has a subscription of under 5,000, and we have 25,000 folks. And true, some of them might be children, so I'm still just wondering if we have any other way to get it out to a larger group, especially senior citizens, because that was who I heard much angst about the cost of the bonds. And so, I want to know from them, just would they approve it? What are their thoughts? So that's what I'm wary of. Would they get this survey? Will we really get their submission? Because one of my neighbors said to me, "Oh, I see lots of old people coming out here to vote. That does not bode well for you." And unfortunately, she was right. Whether there's a causation there, I don't know.
Yeah, and if there are other ideas from the committee or how to reach out to all of the community members, we can, I think we can use the senior center as well. Maybe there's paper copies in the senior centers that if people aren't on technology, they're able to use the paper copies and leave them there.
And how do we distribute information about senior programming? Like, how does information go out generally?
A combination of regular mail through the newsletter and also email. So I'm sure we have, I know we have an email listserv. We try not to use it for anything other than that. As you can imagine, it's somewhat intimidating, and so we're very careful. But this is an interesting predicament, so I'd have to weigh that, talk to the director, talk to the solicitor. But we try not to do that, so.
Okay. And we also want to make sure the information we're getting is balanced, right?
Yes,
So we don't want it to be too heavy from one population so that we can make the most informed
We
decision.
can figure something out.
I have a question. So to submit the stage 2, we have a design currently, and that would be the design that would be progressed in order to submit the stage 2, because you said you have to do schematic design of the school,
Whatever you're proposing in stage 2, you need schematic design for it.
so it would be based on the current design.
So it would be that, and if we're saying we want to do, put new roofs on the elementary schools, we would need a schematic design of the rooftops. So it's every single project has to have the appropriate.
I guess my
documentation moving
point or my question is that a lot of feedback I heard was that the school was too fancy, too expensive. And if we put it back out there and we don't change anything, it's potential that people will be like, you haven't changed anything. And I'm not trying to advocate, that's not my decision, but what options do we have to, if we take it back out to the public, to say, okay, we're paring it down? I mean, if we have to submit the schematic design starting part of stage 2, and it's based on the current design, can we advertise that we're doing something different?
I'm gonna piggyback on that, in that, just to figure out what you're saying, is that let's say the superintendent survey comes back, and it's 80-20 that we don't want one big middle school. We can keep on putting it on the ballot.
Right.
But we have to address the elephant in the room that the people don't want one big middle school, and we can make all the great arguments in the world, because I think we've made them. We've made the fact that there's just so many big arguments. But we don't want it. So let's say we do want one middle school. They're happy with it. One middle school and everyone in the same roof, and that's wonderful. But we don't want it in the north end of town. We want it centralized. There's another elephant in the room that we have to address. So I guess my point is that, the point I'm trying to make is that I think there really need to be some redesign of our thoughts in the question after the superintendent gets his results, or we get the superintendent's results. And again, I'm not jumping on one school. It could be, they may say we want one school, but we want it central. We want 3 schools. We want 2.
And I'll say, I think that's why important putting a survey out there will help us to be able to gain that information and knowing what will the community support. We know as a school administration, and I can't speak for the school committee, but I can speak for my administrative team, we know that these schools need renovations, they need work. But I also think that we need to make sure that we are putting something out there that's going to be supported by the community. And that's really important in order for us to get something passed. But it also has to make sure that the work that we're going to do is what is the best plan for the community. Not just because someone wants it done, it has to be the best plan for the community.
And I'm gonna piggyback one last time, and then I'll piggyback one last time, because Kenny and I had a good conversation today, and this is me speaking. I want to hear what the community has to say. But in the end, I have complete confidence that whatever the superintendent introduces that's best for our children's education, that's what I would support. So, I don't think that if we get this poll that says this certain thing and our superintendent says that's not good for our children, with all due respect, I'm leaning towards the superintendent. So that's what he's here for. We're lucky to have him, and that's what, he needs to get the input from us, but that's where I'm going, so.
Question about the question. Is there anything that says we can only have one question? Or can we have two questions on a ballot for the school? We have two issues, right? We have the new school and we have all the other work that has to be done. Do we want to give an option of one or the other or neither? Or the second one, which has, and it's not my job to craft the question, I understand all of that, but maybe it'll help our conversation. Can we have two questions proposed by the school? Do you want everything as it was? We have all of this additional work to do and we want the new school? Or we have all of this work that has to be done, including to the existing schools. The existing schools which are going to be potentially combined.
I don't know if you can put two questions out there, but I would be concerned about putting two questions out there because then you have people split between what they're going to.
You could also have failure.
Be answered, right?
You could also have failure and then we have nothing.
Right, and I think we just need to really, think and strategize what's the best plan.
I think unfortunately, we're at a little bit of an early spot because we don't have a school committee meeting until Thursday, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it as a committee. We don't know the direction that the committee's going to go in. Right. So that's kind of where we're also at in a kind of a little bit of a holding pattern here until the committee can talk about it, and then the town council can talk about it and try to come up with a plan together. Mm-hmm. So I think that's on the agenda for Thursday. For us to do that initial conversation to see what the appetite of the school committee is. So I think it's hard to have some of this discussion right now because we don't know the direction the school committee is going to go in.
No, but to Adam's point, could you put one thing on about having the middle school and then have another bond question with all the other work?
So what would happen if, let's say question one is in the middle school, and question two is everything else? So if question two passed and question one failed, we have 5 elementary schools and the high school that would have significant investment to it. We have probably our neediest schools, but definitely Whitford being our neediest school, having no additional investment into it.
And if each question had a different dollar amount, right? We would have possibly, I'm just thinking, if you had a question that's just on renovations, then
You could include
that's an amount that would be less than what would be possible in the middle school, and then maybe you go back out later, or the renovations question includes all the renovations for Woodford Middle and Davisville, but we need to know the updated FCI scores, because if the FCI scores are greater than 65, then why would not support us renovating those schools?
Right. Okay.
And based off of the data that Jacob shared during the October meetings, where I think every school that was reassessed within the 50s was higher than the 65, and Wickford was 58 point something. I think there's a really good chance, because that was pre-COVID, and ventilation, as we all know, was a major factor during COVID. I think the fact that Wickford Middle School does not have any ventilation other than opening windows is going to put that number into 65, which to Dr. Duda's point, means that the state will not reimburse on that.
And they won't reimburse anything on that.
I don't think they would, I don't think they would support us doing renovations if the FCI score is over 65.
I mean, but I'm just thinking that's an important thing we need to get out to the community. So it's not even, we're not talking about 35%, we're talking about nothing.
I would need to find that out for sure, if it's nothing. I just know they would not support us renovating a building that has a greater FCI score over 65.
I think in the process when we were doing the high school, I think we were quoting one of the others saying, we have $22 million worth of stuff that needed to be done, but you would have a brand new school for $35 million. And then it was kind of like, the balance was like, we're gonna have $22 million, spend $22 million, fixing up those 13 or 11 or 12 buildings or whatever, or you could have one brand new school for $35 million. And you know, and something like that, I think that was a big sway. I think that you put all that money in repair work, or you build more. I don't know if that was, because there was so much money, looking at about more than $35 million.
So Ralph, why again did you think that we could not have a vote from the town council before our December meeting?
So we could. I guess my point is that so the vote of the town council has to be, at that meeting, you're gonna pass a resolution, and you're gonna actually pass the exact wording of the question. So you'll decide what the plan is, get bond counsel in, word the question, pass the resolution, get it onto the General Assembly. And I just thought that based on what we're hearing right now, based on this conversation alone, it's November 14th, and your council meeting is December 11th. I would be surprised if you felt as a council that you could come up with the plan that you want to put on the ballot in the next 20 days. You have to know what the plan is.
I don't have the survey.
And that would be coming from the school committee, right? So it would be the school committee's plan that would then be adopted.
Right.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
I think January 8th is ambitious, but but then again, I think that the second meeting in January isn't out of the question.
Ever the optimist. I've heard a lot of interesting ideas tonight. There's a couple things that I wanted to make as observations. Dr. Duba, you were good enough to share a draft survey, which I thought was a very good draft in terms of trying to get information from the public. I know it's probably going to take some tweaking, and there's been some discussions with individuals, or I sent you an email about it, but I hope that we can get that done this week. You had a tentative return date by the 23rd of November. I think that makes sense. We got to get this done quickly. In terms of getting it out to people, I agree that older members of the community need to be included in this. I think they made their voices heard pretty clearly last week. I know that I've heard from people in the community that there are folks that are saying, I'm not saying I won't vote for a school. I will vote for a school, but I need to know more, or I want more information. And I took that as a lesson. We need to work very hard at communicating with all members of the community. I think the paper's a good idea. I don't think there's enough time to do a mailing. I wish that there were, but I don't see how you can turn that around.
And we're gonna have to change the date of when it's due, because we don't have it surveyed right now to go in the paper for this week, and then the deadline, right? So now it won't be in the paper until next week. So the return date will need to change based on that.
Maybe the 30th? Do you think that that's realistic?
Could be. I think we want to give people at least a week to be able to complete it. We don't want to give too long, because then people forget about it.
Right.
So a week, I think, is ideal, because that way you get a quick turnaround. So if you go longer, people may not may not do it.
Okay. Well, I hope we can figure out a way to get this done, and I think that if we can get, or you can get, I believe this is coming from the administration, I don't know that it's coming directly from the committee. If it comes from the administration, I hope that we can do this quickly and help you to do your job.
Yeah, it was something that, administration leadership, we sat down and worked on designing it last week.
Okay. The other thing is, you raised the subject of the possibility of 2 bond questions. And I know there may be some mixed views on how that would work. I think we should talk about that more. I hope that's something that we can discuss on Thursday. I think it makes sense to consider that. Perhaps if the public has an idea about what the school would cost and then sees the not insignificant amount of money we've got to spend to fix roofs, HVAC, security centers, all those things, that might be a better way of educating people about what we want to do with this money. And then the last thing is trying to get ready for stage 2. Ms. Quinn asked the question, and she's right, we don't have Perkins Eastman here anymore. We need more money if we're gonna go forward, and I don't think that the school committee is in a position to. We've already done quite a bit here, so we're gonna be looking at the town council for some answers on that, I think. That's my thought.
Is Ralph still involved with the stage 2 from previous? I know that we're gonna be working together.
Yes, with some of the capital projects. Yep, the plan, if approved, was Perkins would handle the new building, Rouse would handle. Yeah.
So I would say we have a good idea regarding a schedule for an election calendar. Heard from a few of you regarding the plan going back out to ask our community to vote on this. We have a school committee meeting on Thursday for this to be discussed.
It's a council meeting on Monday. I know they have an agenda item.
Okay. I think the best use of our time tonight is to go back looking at the capital improvement plan. I'll be presenting this plan to the Asset Management Committee on December 14th, which is exactly a month from today. I know I asked everyone to go back, look at the facility assessment, included all of the schools, and to provide us some recommendations. We need a basis plan based on the funding, and we need to make sure we can identify the source of how we would pay for all of these projects. But we still need to prioritize what those needs are. We gave a draft back in September that we were working on, and I asked everyone to come back tonight, providing some input as far as prioritizing that list, and if there was anything else that needed to get added onto that. So I think now would be the appropriate time for us to switch that agenda item to have that discussion.
Which one would I come first, the draft or the FC Facilities Conditions Assessment?
I would, why don't we pull both them up so we have both up there. Why don't we look at the draft first? And what we presented back in September included items that we had prioritized off of the list. This does not currently include anything from the middle schools, but we have prioritized the roofs with the estimated costs for roofs, for possibility of adding or renovating media centers at the schools to provide some educational enhancements. Hamilton, Kingstown High School, Fishing Cove, Stony Lane, Quinnesset, Forest Park, listed on there. We also have on here the elementary schools that have open classrooms. Those are schools where the classrooms do not have walls. They're dividers that are separating the classrooms. We felt it was best to look at that as a possibility of being able to add walls. Within that project would also include HVAC and electrical work. There's estimated costs for Fishing Cove. Fishing Cove just has a portion of their school that's open. But we know Stony Lane and Quinnesset is all open classrooms except for a few of the rooms or additions that were put on. We have an addition of security vestibules for Fishing Cove, Stony Lane, Quinnesset, Hamilton, and Davisville Academy. We also have the HVAC and AC upgrades on here for some of our buildings, as well as ADA compliance upgrades. We have windows and door replacements for Hamilton, Fishing Cove, Quinnesset, Forest Park, and Davisville Academy. And we have generators on there for some of our buildings as well at Hamilton, Fishing Cove, Quinnesset, Forest Park, and Davisville. And there's one, if you just scroll up again, Mike. We also have the playground on there at Davisville Academy. And the reason why that is there, just in case there's any other over the next 5 years that we find a different use for the building, we wanted to make sure that we had budgeted cost for a playground at that building. The athletics fields for baseball, softball, practice fields, track and field locations, and then general building issues and deficiencies that we have. And that brings us down to the end, right? And so that total of the work that we prioritize is at 72.6 million. Open it up for any comments, feedback from the committee regarding this and the facility assessments that everyone
I
has.
sent a bunch of comments via email, so I guess I included that.
Bring that up.
What, in your professional experience, what number do you want to submit as part of stage 2? And I ask that question because when I look at this, it's difficult for someone, for any, but most of us, to sit down and tell you that, okay, you know something, I would get rid of generator, I would get rid of the playground, get rid of the window door work replacement, and so we're calm down. I'm trying to think what number you want us to go to, and then, but not knowing that, we're gonna tell you that, and in the back of your mind, you're saying, oh, I know next year I'm gonna have to replace those doors at Hamilton. So now your recommendation has just made that I'm not gonna get reimbursed. So it's difficult for us to sit here and do that because we really rely on you, and I trust you, and so.
So right now, I can tell you the Hamilton fire alarm needs to be replaced.
Yeah, I know that just through the fire chief.
There's a brick issue in the interior of Hamilton Elementary School as well. It needs to be.
But that's what I'm saying, so imagine if I recommended cutting that out, because I just lack of the knowledge that you have. So what number are you looking to give as part of stage 2?
So that's the problem that I've been asking that question. How do we know when we don't know how much money we have? I asked that in the last one. Will we still get $500,000? Because at this point, we have to base it all on $500,000 each year in capital, whatever that capital number is, because we're not sure we have a bond. And I don't know how to submit all these little projects without knowing if a lot of the projects are worth more than $500,000.
And to be clear, this is not a list of everything that's wrong with our buildings. These are the highest. We're in public session. The senators aren't necessarily one or two.
I guess my point is, how can you not submit them? And what are your expectations of us, of me? In other words, what number do you want to submit? I mean, get rid of the generator. So how would I say something like that? Because you know what the priorities are. And I know you're concerned about funding, but the bottom line is that if the town, and it's a big ask, it's a difficult thing for us to get $500,000 a year. It really is. No, I know. Let's say we do that for the next 5 years, because this is good for 5 years. It's $2.5 million. And if I remember right, you have to spend at least 50% of it. So that means that based on that analysis, we can only make a stage 2 of $5 million. But we know we're not going to do that. We know we have to address these things. So the bottom line is that it's a tough way to run a business, but you roll the dice, you put what you need to put on there, and then we have the next 5 years to get a bond passed. And at some point, we got to get that bond passed. It may not be for new middle schools, but we know we have to do something. And I have confidence in the people of this town that while they may not support what we put up next, or the next, I have no idea. At some point, we go to them and say, listen, we are about to lose all our reimbursements because we need to make these improvements, and we need a bond. I have confidence that people will vote yes for that bond. So what number?
I would say this is our prioritized list.
I agree.
And the number that's on it has
I didn't see the one that you wanted, exactly.
And these are all very important areas that need to be addressed in all of our schools. And so start taking something out, is what do we take out? Instead of asking for a number, that's the need. And those are the needs that we have right now. And that's not included in the list.
Prioritize it. Now you want to, we can prioritize the priorities.
Well, and so a couple of points. We had a public meeting, I think in September, and somebody had asked about adding gymnasiums to Fishing Cove and Morris Park. And I think that could also help us in another area, which is capacity issues at both of those schools. Because if we were able to add gymnasiums, we might be able to reconfigure some other spaces, particularly at Fishing Cove, where we might be able to better utilize some other learning areas. The other thing is this does not address Whitford and Davis. So if you factor those in there, if I can jump to the document here.
It's about $30 million between the two. I just did all that math.
All the ones and twos.
That's what I was sitting here doing.
I started going on.
Yeah, what the CIP we had originally with Jim, it was a 20, like that 19.8 and 10.5, Whitford Middle and Davisville Middle. It comes out to about $30 million.
And those are ones and twos, or that?
Those were, well, whatever was on that priority list.
So if we come back to this list, just
I would just go back, I know Lisa said she emailed the groups and questions, and that was one of her questions in here is prioritizing the ones, and that's what you were just doing over there, just pulling out what the ones are from this document or computer.
That's what we did on that time.
and so here's Whitford Middle School. So if you were to add the ones into Whitford Middle School, maybe you can run a new calculator for me, it'd be roughly 6.9. And the twos would be roughly 5. Is that a 5 right there? 5.
5.064.
And then I'll go up to Davidson Middle School, do the same for ones and twos. So, Davidson Middle School. So Davidson Middle School, the ones add up to just about $500,000. And the twos add up to 1.8. So 1.8? Thank you. So now, if you want to read those numbers back to me, I can add them.
It's about $14 million.
That's 14.
Yeah, my list had all.
Right, it was 1 through 5.
Yeah.
So if we were to take the 72 down here, plus 14, which are the ones and twos for Whitford and Davis, so if that's the route, and then gym additions at those two locations. Now, we do have that unanswered question of the FCI and reimbursement.
When do we get that question answered?
We can reach out to Rod.
Well, we need to have, well, the question of if the FCI scores over 65 to get reimbursed, we would also need to schedule a assessment analysis of those buildings to get up to the FCI score.
Because the other, once you start investing significant money, I believe it's 40 or 50 years, that's what you're committing to the school. So we're at a building that's approaching 100 years old. So it's 90s right now, I'm trying to remember, yeah, 91, 92 years old. And we're making a commitment to that building for a long time.
And we have that assessment done by RIDE, is that more money?
So it would cost more.
So we would have to have an independent.
So if we work with RIDE, they would have someone who would have to be paying them. Or Rouse has already done the assessment, but it would be in addition, you know, that the cost that we were given for Whitford Middle School was $25,000.
Yep.
We don't have a cost yet for Davisville, but.
I would imagine it'd be about 600. Yeah.
So about $50,000 to.
$50,000 to tell people that these buildings are old.
To keep what?
I said to tell people these buildings are old.
To update the score.
The probably another $50,000 we'd have to spend to get an updated FCI score on the two buildings. About.
I noticed when I was on Davisville Academy, we had an awful lot of money for windows and doors. Is there plans to use that building, whether it's being used now, or, maybe putting the 2 elementary schools in there or something, or?
So we have not had the discussion, I'm sorry, you said Davisville. So we have not had the discussion.
A lot of money being involved to get that up to snuff.
Right, with some of the improvements. What we have talked about for Davisville Academy is moving, we will use that building for current special education program that we have there, as well as moving administrative offices and any other educational programming, not turning it into an elementary school.
Okay.
And the reason for moving administration there is so we don't have a cost on this building, because we have a yearly lease. And if we can move over to another building we own, it's a cost savings for us.
And the renovations there weren't to create office space, those were mostly building envelope related issues.
Okay. So if you were to move there and create office space, would you get reimbursed? As long as it's a school. Right, but it's not part of this though, so you wouldn't get reimbursed. I thought you might say that it wasn't.
It's in here.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you said it wasn't, it was just the envelope.
I would think part of your plan is to necessarily build walls.
Yeah, we weren't looking at doing any major renovations. There's large classroom spaces.
Yeah.
And so our thought was, you can bring in some divider to cubicle, so we can make it work for us.
So I guess I'm toying over my mind. I understand the need to tell the public that why it isn't good to fix Davisville up or Rickford Middle, because they're over their life. But I'm not sure that it sends out a good message to spend $50,000 to do that, and then at the same time say you're being fiscally prudent. That the two just don't go together. But I'm wondering, and that you could justify that the amounts that you have here for the town, for the people and the citizenship here, that you've gotten a pretty good idea, the buildings are too old. So.
It's a right requirement. I would say part of the FCI is seeking a reimbursement.
Right.
So, and again, those reimbursements end in June, so if for whatever reason we don't go out in spring, the FCI score doesn't.
But I think we'd also want to know, because and the reason for going and getting an updated FCI score, yes, for reimbursement, but also keep hearing from people in town, why aren't we just renovating the buildings? Well, if the FCI score is greater than 65, why doesn't support you renovating the buildings? So why would you renovate the buildings if they're above 65? That's the reason why we're saying we need a school building.
And it's not RIDE who does the assessments, they hire outside.
They hire outside, or we use the architect.
Either way we pay.
Right, either way we pay. Either way, there's a cost to that. And is that cost going to support us, so that way community knows, okay, here is what, citizens say on the buildings, and that they are worth being renovated or they're not worth being renovated, and that's why we're saying we need new school buildings.
I think by not spending that money though, we run into the issue, like you were alluding to, I think, that if we don't do this work and have that study done, there will be people that could say, well, you never did that study. We don't have an official word. We don't want to take your word for it. We want an official piece of paper, an official review.
And that's gonna cost more money from the town in order to do
Right.
that.
Right.
When I say town, I just mean town money.
Collective town.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna go over some of the comments that Lisa had sent to the group, just so we can go through that. Lisa, thank you for forwarding that out to everyone. So her first comment was for us to prioritize all of the ones from the document that we have here, probably including new roofs, any life safety items, security vestures, fire alarms, lighting, also ADA upgrades, HVAC upgrades, electrical upgrades, and generator addition replacements. Walls and open classrooms at Fishing Cove, Serene, and Quinnesset seem to me like an important equity issue that should be addressed. She also has in here new meeting centers as a next level of priority, flooring replacements and other cosmetic repairs, high school auditorium, ceiling tiles, gym partitions, playgrounds and athletics as a lower priority. But there's a $762,000 cost for pre-K bathrooms at Fishing Cove. I'm just wondering about the accuracy of that cost that was put in the assessment report. Would that be, go back and look at what that one, if that was replacement of the bathrooms or? Was it upgrades or was it renovation? Yeah, was it any major complaints? I'm sorry, what was that?
I can build a house for that, but.
So those numbers, they don't come from us, they come from cost estimators.
Right, I know, I couldn't find the assessor, so I was wondering if it was a typo or something. It's not 74 or 76, but it just was,
Oh, it's not in this?
I couldn't find it. I looked through it,
Fishing Cove?
I saw some other things in pre-K classrooms, but I couldn't find that.
Just saw it.
And I don't want to belabor that point, it's one item, but it just caught my eye, because
$78,000?
This is the document from Jim that we were working on. We'll place it.
And what is it, so what is the number 78,000?
So let me just make sure.
Yeah, it is.
That's what.
General building issues.
So it could be,
It doesn't specifically say pre-K classrooms or anything like that.
it doesn't say pre-K.
Up here.
Can you give me some of the search on?
Yeah, it says build new restrooms inside kindergarten and pre-K classrooms for $762. Estimated construction value at 20% soft cost.
okay, I just
But
missed it.
does seem like a very large amount for new restrooms.
I think that is the selling point. Every number on this table is, it looks like that it's blowing out of proportion, and everybody's gonna be looking at this stuff and say, where these numbers are coming from. I understand that estimates are estimates, and these people, I don't care how much experience they have, they put those numbers up there, and every time we run into that, even at the Department of Public Works with Keel Construction, it's almost like it's blowing out of proportion. So I think that is what, well, I'm not saying that this is the number, but I guess that is what, you're gonna have to convince people that that is what it is. If people is not swallowing that bill, that's, I think, the issue.
Assessment. Yeah, you can bring that, we didn't bring it to last meeting, but we can.
I don't know, did we?
That's.
We sent it out.
So Bob had a roof assessment done, because,
Yes, I know.
okay, we can talk about
That's
that.
last week.
Okay,
Last
my
week.
apologies.
But then again, we did assessment with Garland, and it is a little bit up there.
Nope. Well, and that was, so that was part of the point, we wanted to see, because the traditionally was the most expensive, you know, if that number came in significantly lower than the estimate we had here, we would know we had a problem. So we at least felt a little more comfortable that the numbers we had, the number that worse was, we say it's 25 and it comes in at 40. You know, so I did take some comfort in knowing that, you know, the roof with the best warranty, the longest warranty, was coming within reason. So yes, there would have been, so that would have been part of us prioritizing the capital improvement plan, would have been had the bond passed, we would have had a certain window of available money and what projects did we want to put forward? And that would have been one of the questions of, well, do we look at a Garland roof, which is a, what, 40 or 50 year, or a 40-year warranty versus a different type of roof that may only have a 20 or 25-year warranty, but there would be savings that may allow us to do another project.
Just to clarify too, this noted as a priority 4, so just, there are some non-priority 1 and 2s on this list, but just something to think about.
The other question she had was the greens, because we have 2 different color greens on here. So the darker green is the completed projects.
So these light greens were projects we were moving forward to this document here.
Okay, it was just,
Well, there are a lot of colors.
well, and the document does say green is already completed,
Correct.
the Rouse document, so
We'll change
now it
that.
makes sense, but
Yeah,
it
but
was.
we'll change that color so it's a different color, so it's not confusing anyone else.
Quick question on the CIP document. When you're looking at adding all of the walls for the open classrooms, does that include the HVAC, or do we have to add more for the HVAC out of that column?
No, that number for the walls includes all MEP work. There's gonna be fire alarm and sprinkler, I mean, there's a ton of work.
Thank you.
And that was one that got me, was the walls.
Yeah.
When Bob explained all the electrical, fire alarm modifications, lighting.
Any other suggestions or comments?
Going back to the survey, I'm trying to relate, I don't know the questions that you guys are trying to put on that survey, how much of those questions relate to what people have been saying on all these meetings? Are we kind of following up a little bit on those comments, like the lady this evening saying about the geotechnical report?
So no, the survey questions weren't specific to that. The survey questions are specific to gather information as to why people in the community may not be in support of this work or are in support of this work, as well as providing some input on other capital improvement projects that we've listed as far as renovations and rating some of those renovations. And there are some open-ended questions just to gather more input as to what would be supported in the town. There was a question in regards to 1 middle school versus 2 middle schools. Would people in town support enhancements to CTE programs? It was really gather information to know why were people in support, why were people not in support, and also being able to get other input regarding the other renovations that we said are needed across the other buildings.
The reason I'm asking is because based on what you just said, I still have, per se, doubts about the geotechnical report. So I say, where is the answer to that? You're asking me to basically give me my opinion on why yes, why not, but you are not answering what has been going on every meeting with the public. And I'm wondering up to what degree we are not separating all those questions with the survey, and you are still not answering people's concerns. And I'm not sure how that is gonna play out.
There are open-ended questions, just to ask, as far as there any other comments or reasons that you would not, were not in support of the projects. So that would give people opportunity to add in something else that wasn't a very specific question. I think we've also talked in meetings regarding the environmental studies and the stages and phases of when they would be completed. I believe we did provide answers to when those studies are being done throughout this process up until the stage 2.
And all that information is found online.
It's all online, all those documents, all the reports are there.
Yeah, but we've not taken the page down, it's all.
My question, and this could be to the superintendent, so we have to submit a stage 2. And how do we handle Davisville and Whitford Middle in the stage 2?
So to go back to your first statement, we don't have to submit a stage 2. we can submit a stage one and reset the clock and have another year, but any projects done within that time, we would not have an approved plan.
Gotcha.
So we would not receive reimbursement. And that's what was done last year. So stage one was done in February of 2022, with the anticipated stage two done in February of 2023.
Okay.
What we did instead was to stay within the windows. We did another stage one in February of 2022 because our necessity of construction had changed, the priority had changed.
Okay.
And then you have a year. We were originally going to go with 6 months, which would have been September. But when the General Assembly changed the date, we were able to get the full year out of it.
Yeah.
So, but we're right now working off of an extension. What we had last year was we still were within our initial or most recent 5-year window. We're now working, we're now approaching year 5.5, and we had the extension to arrive, but that extension is ending in anticipation of a stage two being submitted in February.
So I guess
We could submit a very basic stage two to put something forward, but the only reimbursements we're willing to receive is what we put in there. Right? And so, I think we want to try to get the most reimbursement back on the work. We want to be able to include all of these.
I guess my question is that, so we have this $76,000, and if we don't add Davisville and Whitford to it, and the bond fails, and our FCI score is under 65, we will not get reimbursed for any improvements.
Correct.
So.
At those two locations,
At those two locations.
Yeah.
So, and if we do put them in there, and we put a request for 90, and our FCI score is under 65, where the bond fails or passes, we will get reimbursement for those.
If as long as we identify what those projects will be, and the stage two is approved.
But I guess, but they'll all be, those projects will be tackled if the bond passes.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the downside to including Davisville and Whitford as part of our stage two?
So
I'm missing something.
Our AE fees, so for each project we submit,
Yeah.
we need schematic design.
Yeah.
So the more projects we submit, the higher our stage two A&E fee is gonna be.
Okay.
So to go back to putting everything forward, that is gonna result in a higher A&E fee than if, let's say, we were with the earlier we said $5 million. That would be a much easier way to cost-effective lift for the architects versus having to draw everything out, including some stuff that, if we were to go with the two question route, new middle school renovations, we would have spent A&E fees on something, let's say they both get approved, we didn't need the A&E for those.
You have to do that for stage two.
I would say, the larger stage two package, the more cost, right, for that stage two submission, because we're paying for all the designs on every single project we're putting forward.
And I'm as cheap as they come, but I guess my point is that, yes, the more we put in, the more cost, but if we don't put it in there, and we need to do it, we just lost 35%. Right. And if you do put it in there, and the FCI score is over 65, you cannot do it.
That's what we're unsure on.
Okay.
And I was reading through a whole bunch of FCI 65 and Y, and it's saying that is the threshold for considering the replacement.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
But I didn't anywhere say that you shall or shall not get reimbursement.
And if we don't put it in there, but the bond passes, we'll still get reimbursement, because the bond's part of stage two.
So again, if we don't,
If we don't put Davisville and Whitford in there, but we go forward on a new middle school, that's considered part of stage two.
that's right, because the plan is to build, if you're building a new school. Whatever the plan is that we're submitting for the middle schools, that would be included within the stage two for reimbursement on that project.
Okay.
And I should know this, but because we're working off of the extension, there are no plans for any of this work yet.
That's correct.
So Rouse never came forward with any schematic plans.
We never went to him with all this. So then would I be correct in saying that while this input I thought was really good tonight, that we wouldn't want to pass anything tonight because we don't know what our stage two is going to look like just yet, because we still need to hear from the school committee council.
What I would say, it's recommendations, right? this is an advisory committee, so you're not approving what that CIP would be, you're making recommendations to me to create the CIP, which I bring to school committee and to asset management.
Gotcha.
So, there'll be a draft going in for Thursday for school committee.
Gotcha.
And, putting that together, and, our goal is to take what we have, listen to input, prioritize, the ones, consider putting in DMS and WMS. So what I'm taking from this is there are 2 plans. Let's have a plan that we can share that doesn't include the middle schools, right? And what would that cost be? And what would a capital improvement plan look like, including the renovations for the middle school and for the middle school? And us setting that timeline of when that work would get done over the next 5 years.
And you want to get the FCI score by February 15th.
And we would want to get the FCI score probably even sooner than February 15th to know, is it worth renovating the buildings or not?
Gotcha. Which I agree, you had mentioned that earlier, and I agree that, but I think we all heard that publicly, it would be good to have that score to let the public know, listen, even if we were to put a price tag on renovation, we're not going to get reimbursement, so I think that's a point, as much as if you don't want to spend that money.
Is it, and I'm kind of going off what you had said, Ralph, about do we include the middle schools in the stage 2 submission or not? If we were to include them, and this is, I guess, a question of how RIDE would work. Would RIDE say, well, all these projects look good, but these 2 middle schools don't, so take the middle schools out and we'll approve everything? Do they do like a line item approval? Or would they say, no, you included the middle school, so we're going to reject the whole plan?
I know they offer feedback. This is my first stage 2 submission, so I do know that they offer feedback along the ways. I don't know that answer. Do you know any experience?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry, I was reading.
I was just wondering, with the stage 2 submission and the question about whether to include the middle schools in that or not, when RIDE makes a decision on the stage 2 plans, is it like a line item veto, or is it all or nothing in approving the plan? So if we include the middle schools and they say, well, those middle schools need to be replaced, so we're just going to deny the whole plan.
So my experience with RIDE stage 2, they're not going to accept the stage 2 to put forward to the board until it's what they want.
Okay.
So if we may bring something forward, and they may say, we want you to consider X, Y, and Z. Go back, put that in there for it's not like a resubmission of stage 2, but we're working with them, right, of going back and forth of what they believe you should be putting in.
So we think you might.
And once we get to that point, that's where they submit it to.
Okay. So they might say, we think you need to reconsider.
Yeah, they'll be our stage 2, they'll review it, they'll say, we think you need to put in considerations for DSL and for middle, and then we submit that. Or then they come back and say, you know what, we really think we should be doing more educational enhancements across the board in all of your schools. What can you do with staying within that number?
Okay.
And making some changes. So they'll give us feedback based on what they believe, where we should be making some additions or taking something out or switching out some projects. And you would work with them through that process.
And earlier you said you were going to be asking the town council for some money. Was it money? Yes, did I hear that right?
I don't think I said asking them for money. I said we would have to look, we need to decide where we're identifying those funds from, as far as being able to complete the stage 2 process.
Because what's the estimate for the stage 2 process?
What would be the remaining of the cost for the Perkins Eastman contract and the Jacobs?
Right, depending on that.
So in the range of 800,000.
Right. Unless we change something.
Yep. That's right.
If we just base it off of what we
Yeah, but any changes is going to be, so 800,000 plus any changes.
And does that include the schematics for the other improvements to the schools, or is that additional money?
that would be, in addition to we talked about, it could be Rouse that does that work.
And the school committee, prior to being on it, did set aside funds for some of the capital work, some of the A&E capital work for stage 2. There was an additional, that's how this document, so that's how this document was put together with those funds. There are funds remaining on that for schematic design. I can't tell you right now if I send them this project and say, okay, what's the A&E for schematic design for this? I don't know that dollar amount.
So if there's no other comments or suggestions, I'll go back and continue working on the CIP, and it'll be updated for what I present on Thursday for school committee.
Does it make sense? And this is just what you think in your opinion. Do we need to have another building subcommittee before you present to that asset committee?
I think
Once we have, the school committee has a chance to talk, the town council has a chance to talk and actually discuss it, then do we need to have another meeting, I guess?
yes, and I think we probably want to have another meeting after we have school committee this week, town council next week. So we come back as a committee to discuss what those next steps and how we're moving forward, but also to review the final CIP that we presented.
Like first week of December, so kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to set that, dude?
I was going to say that would be the next item on the agenda.
Anybody, if the attendance sheet hasn't come over here, if we could, I'm sure that does.
When's our school committee meeting? So there's a school committee meeting on that 5th.
Thank you, this is just searching.
Should we do before the 5th or after the 5th? Is it, we want to have one before then, right? Because you have one this week also?
I think it might be best to have our meeting after the school committee meeting.
After the 5th?
Right. Sure.
Is the plan for on the 5th, the school committee to approve what's going on asset management? Because we have asset manager on the 14th.
Hold on. Look at something else. Sure. So December 5th, so November. So tomorrow, and then December 5th, presentation of the capital improvement plan to school committee.
So you're looking to do it after the 5th?
Well,
Is that right?
my planned schedule is to have it go to school committee on the 5th. So we're approving it, we don't have another meeting prior to the 14th of setting the.
She wanted it before the
So
5th.
we should meet before the 5th. Yeah, so I was looking at budget calendar versus,
So before the 5th,
so if we look at the week of the 27th.
Wow. So, So do the 27th, I'm just looking at my schedule and talking out loud. The 27th looks good. On the 28th, I have a hold for an audit committee meeting, but I can avoid that.
If we do the 27th, we have policies, you can meet after policy at 6:30. I think that's not too late.
So just thinking about the calendar, that's the first day back after the Thanksgiving recess, so we've got just about a week to get things in order. Does that give enough time? So the school committee meeting is Thursday, because it's Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we'd have to post an agenda on, so it's Thursday, I'm just thinking out logistics. So the meeting's on Monday.
You'd have to do it by Thursday at 4:30.
That's
Friday,
Thanksgiving.
Monday, yes.
So the Wednesday, because the Friday doesn't count as a.
Friday does not count as a holiday.
Friday's a business day, so you have to post it Wednesday.
Wednesday, 22nd, post. And then the discussion's pretty much gonna be on capital improvement plan unless we have something else to add to that.
Right.
So,
We'll post that on.
we can put that up there, and if we wanna add something, we can change it.
And if the extra day helps you, if we're going with the 28th, if you let me know that now, I'll make sure my audit committee meeting is not that night. So I can do whatever you need me to do. 29th is no good for me, the 30th is the tree lighting in town, so that won't work.
Yeah, I don't know if we could do the 27th, I mean, that would Monday the 27th at 6:30, would that be okay for everyone? Yes. Okay, so we'll do Monday the 27th at 6:30.
If you think this is the only agenda, item, you can post it right away.
Yeah,
That way we'll fill it out.
get that done tomorrow
So you're meeting at 6:30.
at 6:30.
Here.
Here, yes,
Is it 6:30?
6:30, yes.
If there's no other discussion, there's a motion in order to adjourn. Motion to move. Second? All in favor? Excellent. Have a happy Thanksgiving. It's already here. Yes.
That's why I was